I want to just open it up to the audience. Anyone have any questions for any of the panelists or all of the panelists? If not, I'll ask my own question. Yeah, go ahead. Yes, please. Oh, wait for the microphone.
Well, the United States has provided far more military and other aid to Ukraine than any other country. It looks like it's over $60 billion. So as an American, I'm inclined to think, well, look, Europe should take care of aiding Ukraine with its energy crisis and its displaced persons. We're taking the military part of it and assuming a huge burden. That seems like a fair division of labor to me. We're building up their military, and the Europeans who are probably more inclined with the humanitarian aid. Does that seem like the division of labor here, the way it should be? At least seems like that to me.
Well, if you look at Poland, for example, up until the beginning of September, the Polish government spent more than $2 billion on caring for refugees in Poland. So when we are trying to estimate the costs of this crisis or war, if you just look at the aid that is being sent directly to Ukraine, yes, the United States is sending a lot, much more than Europe. But if you look at the actual costs, you have the direct costs of caring for these refugees, which is a lot of money, not just in Poland, but obviously in other countries too. But you also have the indirect costs of the energy crisis. Inflation in Europe is much higher right now than here in the United States. So, and when it comes to the defense industry, just to say a few words about two big countries, France and Germany. The problem with Germany is, and that also might have changed since Monday, is that they have to change this status quo that has been there since the end of the Second World War of not sending a lot of weapons abroad. With the French, it's different. The French, Macron has this idea of French grandeur. So he's trying to position himself on the international scale as an arbitrator. If you look at what he's saying, he's trying to position himself as if he would be the one who could broker a peace between Russia and Ukraine. And for that, he doesn't want to take sides and send a lot of weapons. The same is true for the number of soldiers that has been trained. France only trained less than 100 soldiers. That's not the case in, for example, the United Kingdom.
Okay, anyone else? Yes.
Thank you. Interesting presentations by all, but a question for Ms. Rush regarding the humanitarian parole. It seems that the administration invents these numbers, and I'm curious if you could give more detail on how they arrived at 100,000. I mean, it could have been 200,000. It could have been any other number as far as I know, but perhaps there's some kind of methodology in the process. I read yesterday in the New York Times that the administration suddenly invented 24,000 as a number for Venezuelans, and for years we have been doing 20,000 with this humanitarian parole admission for Cubans. And I know many scholars say the presidency doesn't even have this kind of authority, but just to tackle the number, why 100,000? Is anyone giving any kind of calculation methodology to that number? Thank you.
I don't think there's a ceiling like with refugee resettlement when you say the president has to set a ceiling of refugees resettled by year and also talk to Congress about it and agree together. However, I think the parole system is totally a spontaneous ad hoc solution for what are we going to do. In the beginning, the Biden administration said, well, Ukrainians are going to stay in Europe. And we're going to provide Europeans a lot of help for, they don't want to leave Europe, which is true for the most part. However, many wanted to leave and come here. At this point, the Biden administration, he was in Brussels, and he made this promise. We're going to admit 100,000 Ukrainians, and we're going to prioritize family reunions, meaning people who have family here. We always talk about family reunions. And I think this number comes from the amount of resources that are put to bring these people in and process them and then give them refugee resettlement benefits, even though they are not refugees. So 100,000, 125,000 was the ceiling for the refugee. 100 could very well be in that range. However, with the parolees, the system is very quick, very fast, and many want to come, and that's what happened. So they came, 60,000 came through the parole, this system I was talking about, the sponsorship, 20,000 before the system was put in place, because what happened is that Ukrainian came to the border, and then they were given parole to come in. So to stop that and not to overwhelm the border even more, they created this program. So, and they said, do not come to the border anymore. We are going to bring you here directly, which is a lot of, if you look at the Biden administration, these are pathways they are really pushing forwards. Don't come here, we'll come and get you, and we'll open a pathway for you to come.
And I think, I mean, to add to what she said, 100,000 wasn't like a cap that they had set. It was what they figured they'd be able to handle, or, quite honestly, the way things work, the president may have just made it up on the fly, who knows?
And actually, the real numbers, one could be more. I mean,
Right.
if we calculate them tomorrow, it could be more than in a month or 2 months ago.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
I was happy to hear you say the big role that churches are playing over there, helping the IDPs. But you said that the churches weren't receiving any money from abroad. Did you mean government money? Because churches historically, most of them are international, historically get money from within the churches and the members of churches worldwide. Is that government money, or are they really not getting money at all?
First of all, when it comes to government aid or aid from international NGOs, they are not really receiving anything. When it comes to private donations from abroad, yes, they are, but it's intermittent. First of all, it's intermittent, and second of all, what's happening in Ukraine now after 7 months of fighting is exactly the same thing that was happening in 2015 in Syria. After a while, Ukraine gets out of the news cycle, and then donations start dropping, private donations.
We need private donations.
I had a question for Vic. Oh, yeah, Victor, go ahead. I had a question for you, too, but go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Mark. Just some addition for this whole issue of energy and the donation of U.S. military equipment to Ukraine, comparing with the burden sharing of what Europe is doing. Ladies and gentlemen, sorry to be brutal, but it's very important to emphasize and to understand each other in the strategic context that this 60+ billion US aid for Ukraine in a military term, comparing the price of energy crisis and inflation in Europe, it is a peanut. It's very, very, very important to understand, because what I feel now, there's a huge misunderstanding between the two parts of the Atlantic Ocean, and today, so I'm committed transatlantist, and I saw very strong efforts for different actors to jeopardize this cooperation. So it's very important to understand each other. Germany just accepted a new huge loan, more than, if I'm not mistaken, 200 billion euro support for the energy sector, just for the survival of the German industry. In Hungary, Hungary produced, I tried to calculate quickly, I think 2% of the GDP of European Union. According to rough estimation, we'll spend 10 billion additional euro this year until the end of this period, until the end of May, to somehow feed the gas into our country. The price of natural gas in Europe increased in the last month 17 times more. Can you imagine it? Its effects on the whole population, and it's important that there's no alternatives for Europe out of question, it's our mistakes. In the last 20 years, I always heard that, we should diversify, etc. Everybody was committed for the diversification. It reached a very limited results because LNG is expensive, Russian gas seemed very, very cheap, etc., etc. Okay, but now the situation is on the ground. And this whole issue will cost thousands of billions of dollars for Europe. And in a long or mid-term perspectives, my estimation is that Europe will need a second Marshall Plan if we want to avoid the collapse of economies. Because if economy will collapse, it's very evident why the Russian playing this game. It will be a big blow for this whole cooperation.
Thank you. There was a question there first, and then you. Yes.
So I was just wondering, how effective were the legal pathways that the Biden administration set up in helping to ease that strain on the southern border from those Ukrainians that were wishing to flee their country? And also, if you could, I'm not sure if any of you guys have looked into this, but how effective do you think that this new legal pathway set up for Venezuelans will be at easing that strain as well?
The Venezuelan probably, it just happened, so we'll have to see, and probably yes, it will ease this. The Ukrainians, the fact that they were coming to the border and they told them don't come, we have a new pathway for you, that obviously helped. However, before that, the idea was that with border crossers, especially from Central America and the unaccompanied minor, the Biden administration was saying, don't come here, we're going to bring you, we're going to process you and bring you. That didn't really work well. Because
That was a separate, different program,
Yeah.
Central American Minors
Central American
Program.
minors, and so it and being processed in Costa Rica, which is like you stay in your region, we process you in Costa Rica, and you'll get admitted into the United States. Just don't come here. It didn't really work, I think, for many reasons. But one very, very simple reason, if you know the human mind, people want to come fast. They don't want to apply. They don't want to be rejected. They don't know if it'll work for them. So they just come because they can. You see, so
And they know we'll let them go.
yeah, exactly. They can. So the point is, I don't think for the Ukrainian, they stopped coming through the border, which is obviously, and they are flying, and they are helped financially from here, flying directly. They are paying for their flights, unlike for the refugees, we lend them money, and then supposedly from IOM. So I don't think these legal pathways are working so much for some populations, perhaps.
Victor, so this is kind of an observation, but what I had thought of is that the food insecurity, which the war compounded, would then lead to people leaving Africa. But what you're suggesting is that it's almost a three-step process, that the war in Ukraine causes food insecurity in Africa, which causes hunger and instability, which then causes people who aren't starving to be the ones who actually leave. I mean, it's almost like a domino effect where our policies then, have multiple, they sort of echo and have multiple consequences.
Yeah, definitely, and it's true mainly for the sub-Saharan Africa. It's very important, ladies and gentlemen, that always the middle class is leaving because they have the money to leave. From Ethiopia, the journey to Europe costs between $3,000 and $8,000. Sometimes they can make the money during the journey, stopping in Sudan, working something, or joining mercenaries, sometimes in a forced way to militias. But ordinary people with limited networks not leaving the continent. And yes, we see these two sides of the story in the sub-Saharan Africa, when the starvation and the food crisis affects a domino effect, and still the middle class considering, because of the collapsing state, that it's high time to leave the country. It's happening in Ethiopia. One of my good friends, I was there in May. That time he was still in Addis Ababa. Now he's in Fairfax, and he will never go back. Very clever, very trained people, and it will be a big gain for the United States, but a huge loss for Ethiopia. And the other is the middle class in North Africa. They are not starving, but that they are watching the increasing food prices, the limiting potential in the labor market, which was the main root cause behind even the Arab Spring 2011. And there is no perspectives for the young guy. They are trained. They paid for the university. They had ideas to move forward in the life, and there's no possibilities. And ladies and gentlemen, it's the Middle East. It's not the Western world. If you have no money, no job, nobody will get married with you, because you must be ready to have a flat to feed your family. It's shocking to see that in Egypt when 30 years ago people get married 20, 25. Now 30, 35 old young people are alone, not because they don't have love and feelings, but they don't have the economic background, and they are moving.
Okay, thank you, Victor. I think we're going to wrap it up. I'm pretty sure our panelists are willing to be accosted afterwards if you want to talk to them. This discussion will be posted to our website at cis.org within a few days, next week, I assume. And I thank all of the panelists for coming. Thank you in the audience for attending, and hope you tune in to our next event. Thanks.